Genetic variation is defined in the Biology Online Dictionary as the variations of genomes between members of a species or between groups of species thriving in different parts of the world as a result of genetic mutation. For example, these two brothers. They are from the same parents and same DNA, but they look different. This is all thanks to genetic variation. Your genes have alleles, or different forms of the same gene. Alleles determine genetic features such as hair or eye color. So in simpler terms, genetic variation is the variation in alleles and genes within populations. It can be identified by either continuous traits, traits that vary continuously, or discrete traits, traits that can only be measured discretely, such as tongue rolling. The three sources of genetic variation are mutation, gene flow, and sexual reproduction. Here, mutation. Gene flow is the movement of genetic info between different populations. This increases genetic variation because it introduces new alleles into a population. As you can see with the differences in these birds and bunnies, sexual reproduction creates new gene combinations, leading to genetic diversity. Half and half genes from your parents create a giant number of possible genetic combinations. This is done through crossing over during sexual reproduction.
The reasons scientists and we as students move from traditional to modern vary because of all the new discoveries and species and facts that we find every day. Improved technologies have altered our understanding of the world. Quote from sciencelearn.org. Biologists use a microscope to observe the unseen world. With the discoveries of bacteria and others items in the not known before, such as archaea and eubacteria, we have been able to expand our classification types. This DNA technology has allowed scientists to re-examine the relationships between organisms and refine the classification system.
Abiogenesis is the process used to explain the origin of life. Abiogenesis starts with prebiotic molecules like hydrogen and carbon to form hydrocarbon structures to form the basis of life. Then these hydrocarbon structures become more complex and turn into fatty acids and proteins. Most of these fatty acids and proteins from the origin of life are found in hot temperatures in geysers or very deep waters, so they were not able to form more complex structures like you and me. What happens next is that these molecules find their way into air particles like water and are able to form more complex structures such as cells to form you and me and all animals today.
Common ancestry describes how in evolutionary biology a group of organisms share a most recent common ancestor. Common ancestry between organisms of different species arises during speciation, in which new species are established from a single ancestral population. Fossil record. The fossil record is a huge collection of fossils that document the history of life on Earth. Embryology is a type of evidence of evolution, the study of embryos. An embryo is an unborn or hatched animal or human young in its earliest phases. Vestigial structure is a structure in an organism that has lost all or most of its original function in the course of evolution, such as human appendixes. DNA in many ways are DNA encodes as considered identical twins, which are results of embryos splitting in early life. They're actually a single individual that divided in two parts during the early stages of embryonic development. They don't call them identical twins for nothing. Studies shows that in addition to looking the same, they're also extremely similar in most all the other measurable respects, including intelligence, and of course the reason why they are so alike is they have identical DNA. Patterns of evolution. For example, the Buddha is one example of divergent evolution. The limp in many different species in a common origin, but has diverging somewhat in overall structure and function. The adaptive radiation is many related species developing from a single common ancestor. There are three types of selection: directional, stabilizing, and disruptive. And there are three types of isolation: behavioral, geographic, and temporal. Coevolution happens when two unrelated groups become uniquely adapted to each other. Like, for example, marsupial and placenta mammals diverged from one common ancestor more than 100 million years ago and have evolved independently ever since. The widespread evolutionary phenomenon is known as the convergence. The bottleneck is the sharp reaction in the size of population due to environmental events and the genetic drift, the random changes in the frequency of alleles and gene pool.
Classification is a process by which scientists group living organisms. They are grouped and classified based on how similar they are. Before our modern-day way of classifying them, using a variety of techniques such as genetic analysis, similarity was determined by examining the physical characteristics of an organism.
The three mechanisms of evolution are heredity, competition, and genetic variation, also connecting with natural selection. The first one we'll be discussing is heredity. Every species on the planet came from one beginning origin of life. This means that if you follow the family tree back long enough, you will find similarities within every animal on Earth. The first animal will have a relation to all the animals down the family tree, whether it be their size, the shape of their head, or the different type of body systems within them. The next one we'll be talking about is genetic variation, also closely related with competition or natural selection. Genetic variation is caused by natural selection and competition. Competition usually beats out the weak of the family tree. Also, it stops excessive production, and also natural selection helps with this process as well. Natural selection may choose the one that are suited for the environment at the time. This is why there is genetic uniqueness or genetic variation within all animals on Earth, because the Earth is always changing and these animals always have to adapt to be better. And with competition, it may be the strongest, the quickest, the boldest, the best fighter, or even the best looking person or animal. And the reason we have genetic variation is because of the chromosomes that we get from both of our parents, which form a gene. And on the gene, there is information for every different animal on Earth. You may get green eyes, or blonde hair, or some different colored type of hair. You may be strong, you may be skinny, you may be kind of fat or chubby, you may be tall, you may be short. This is all because we have two parents that have two chromosomes that cross over with each other and share information.